Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Next Level Woman Life, Career, and Leadership, the podcast where we have real conversations to help women, and especially women of color, break barriers, unlock their potential, and lead unapologetically. I'm your host, Kristen Newsom, and today we're diving into the power of mentoring for career success in higher education. My guest is Dr. Juliet Jordan Lowery, an educator with over 30 years in higher education leadership, currently serving as Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer at Greensboro College. She earned her doctorate in leadership for change from Fielding Graduate University. A devoted mother of two young adults, Jordan and Jaron, who are her why. Dr. Lowery leads with purpose, guided by the belief that if you are not intentionally inclusive, you may be unintentionally exclusive. And the enduring wisdom of her mother and grandmother. If I can help somebody, then my living shall not be in vain. She serves on numerous boards and is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, known for her collaborative approach and commitment to justice and equity. Dr. Lowery is widely recognized as a higher education change agent and sought after thought partner on inclusive excellence in higher education. Her work in inclusive excellence and mentorship has helped shape countless careers. Welcome, Dr. Lowery. I'm so happy to have you here today and to have this conversation with you.
Good evening. I am so excited to be here with you.
Most definitely. We go way back. We've known
Way
each other for many, many years, and it is just a true just a gift to be able to have this conversation with you, reflecting back as two little girls who knew they wanted to make a difference and a mark in the world, and now to be here to sit with you and speak to you about your origin story and defining moments in your life. And what I would love to know, and what I'd love for you to share with our listeners, is what inspired your career in education? And can you share a pivotal moment when mentorship or its absence shaped your path?
Looking back, as you said, we go way back, and those little girls who hung out in my bedroom talking about those dreams. Um, you know, It started when I was really young. Looking back, I think about my parents were educators. My father, my high school principal, my mom, a beloved music teacher in the school district. But even beyond that, my grandparents were educators, and my uncles and aunts, if they didn't finish in education, they at least started their careers as teachers. And
Mhm.
so for me, education was not on my radar in terms of what I wanted to do. Um, my undergrad degree is in English, and I had the desire to go to law school. I was going to work in the family court system. Um, there were a couple of things that impacted my road to education. One was the loss of my mother, um, going into my third year of college. And the second was an opportunity to work with a pre college program after that third year at Bradley. And so I finished in 4 years. My father was like, "You can take a break. You've had, kind of a rough 2 years after your mother's death, but I finished in 4 years." And
Mm.
again, I was still focused on something outside of education, but it was that pre college program that I worked with. And at that time is when I met my first mentor. Nikki Roberson worked in the admissions office, a African American woman. And that was kind of the catalyst to the work that I do now. And after graduating from Bradley, I began work at Ball State University as an admissions counselor, and that was my introduction to higher ed.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a powerful start to your story. And your mother was such a beloved woman. And I know that she would be so proud of you and your journey so far. Let's talk about what it's like to navigate those spaces in higher education. What did you find to be some of the biggest challenges in predominantly white institutions, and how did you overcome them?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, there are not a lot of us in terms of women of color in what I would call the C-suite or the leadership roles in higher education. Excuse me, but statistics from reports from Catalyst and also from um, American Association of Colleges and Universities and TIAA CREF show that we're present from the entry level up to the mid management positions, but then what happens after that point?
Mm,
And so, it makes you think about those things where people say, we aren't present in those roles because we aren't qualified. And I beg to differ. Again,
mm.
when you think about Black women, women of color, we are the most educated, and the data shows that. But
Say
it's
that.
about access and opportunity. And so for me, when we think about that question, navigating higher education as a Black woman, um, it can be very difficult. Um, Black fatigue is real.
Mm,
Suffering from microaggressions on a daily basis. And then sometimes, because of the experiences that you have, that imposter syndrome sometimes creeps in. You work hard, you put in the time, you do the hard work, you show up. You have to be three times as qualified, if not more, but to be in those spaces that were not created for us,
mm,
but you're still rising. But because of the systems, you can't crack that next level. And again, that's where that mentoring is so important.
mm. You've not only navigated those challenges, you've risen to leadership roles dedicated to changing these challenges. So many props to you, my sister, for, in the words of Maya Angelou, and still I rise. So, you
Well,
know, we're doing this thing in spite of the challenges. But what drew you to pursue a doctor of education and leadership for change and ultimately to serve as the chief diversity officer?
well, again, thinking about that last question, um, you know, there were many challenges that I came up against. And it just got to a point, my previous institution, I had been there 12 years, and um, through my mentoring students, they started turning things around on me. Um, they
Mm,
would call me Miss J. And I think of two students in particular, um, Erica Daniel and Kathy Anthony. Uh, they would often ask me, "Well, Miss J, when are you getting that doctorate?" And my thing was, do as I say, not as I do, because they always talked about me pushing them. You're supposed to go and do this, and you can get that master's, you can do this. And they were like, so why are you not doing what you told us? And so I heard that, and it just came at a point in time where Um, I had done all I could do at that institution without having that terminal degree.
Mm.
And even with that terminal degree, there was no um, assurance that I would have been welcomed to the C suite.
Mm.
Because we know getting a seat at the table isn't always given to us. We have to bring our own chair. But in order for me to bring my own chair, I needed to have that next degree. And so I made the decision to work on my doctorate full time. And so I left that institution and I chose Fielding Graduate University simply because in my research, um, one of the things that they really focused on was that equity piece and
Mhm.
inclusion. And not only did they speak about it, it wasn't just in the print, but in terms of the faculty, in terms of the student body. And I was fortunate enough at the time that I began my program, my cohort was all women of color.
Mm.
African American women, Hispanic women, even a Native American woman who lived on a reservation. And so imagine going to that new student orientation and I'm surrounded by all these phenomenal women. And so that's how I began my journey. And again, I was very focused on leadership for change
Mm.
because I
Mm.
consider myself a change agent. And so I wanted to be immersed in that type of study and work with those type of scholars. And it was the best decision.
Absolutely. Well, as a fellow alum from Fielding Graduate University, I can say that we share that experience. I was very impressed
Yes,
for a college that was, really not at the time that I attended. I really didn't know much about it, but the same impact and experience of people actually teaching what they were living and seeing the inclusive learning experience that was created was just really refreshing. And I
yes.
think a model that should be repeated throughout higher ed because they definitely do it right. So
Definitely, definitely. And I think about, I call them my sister friends because there were four African American women and we bonded, and I'll shout them out as well: Teresa Reed and Wanda Whiteside, and then Alicia Scott. We would be on Zoom calls and pushing each other through. And there's one of us left to finish. Three of us have already completed that doctorate. And so we are lifting our sister through to the finish line. And that's what it's about.
that
This,
is
this whole
exactly what it's about.
the mentoring experience. And you talked about the difficulty being a Black woman in these roles. And it takes a community, a support community to remain in these roles.
You know, I hope this is a message that people really get at the core the importance of our unity, of each one reaching one, and of
Yes,
leaving no one behind. No one who's willing to go should be left behind. So I really appreciate your perspective in lifting the sisterhood and any and all that desire to be lifted for change.
yes, most
So
definitely.
thinking about, the institutional impact and, across your roles that you've held at Wake Forest, University of Michigan, Greensboro College, I know that you've seen systemic barriers for women of color, as we just spoke about. And I'm curious, though, what have you witnessed as to how institutions have either helped or hindered the progress for women of color?
You know, in 2025, I believe a lot of the institutions may not be aware of the systemic issues that persist. Those barriers that are there. Some, how should I put it? Maybe there's some that are aware and some that are not aware. But that's where we go into those spaces, and that's where we have to create the change. Um, it's really important. You mentioned something in terms of uh, a community and each one reach one and
Mm,
so forth. That's really important. I know in the role that I'm in now, it's very important for me to reach back and try and bring others along with me. You know, I've been in the battles. I've
mm,
gone to war.
mm,
um, I don't want others to have to go through what I did. So kind of like um, you mentioned in my bio, thinking about my mother and my grandmother, the
mm.
song "If I Can Help Somebody."
Yeah.
Then that's what I focus on now. Um, I want to kind of pave the way for those coming behind me, helping to break down those barriers, bring awareness, be in those spaces that aren't always welcoming for us to open those doors. You know, we talk about mentors, we talk about advocates, we talk about sponsors. So I try wherever I can to be that mentor, that advocate, that sponsor, or be all three, whatever I
Mm,
need to do so that I can bring others along with me. And so when we think about these institutions, you know, when you hear about microaggressions, helping to educate campus about those things. And don't be a bystander when you see those things happening.
mm.
What do they say? If you see something, you say something.
Yeah.
Um, there's a way to correct people or help them to understand. You know, it's about drawing people in instead of pushing them out. Um, and so finding a way to be at that table or to have the ear of people who can help you help those others. And so that's kind of the focus that I have. Um, Again, the microaggressions are there, they're not going away. You know, helping to create those positive environments. We talk about creating welcoming environments where people feel seen, valued, and heard. So,
Mm.
working with HR, what are things that we can do to change the climate on campus? Um, I laugh at my wise, I won't say old age, at my seasoned age. Um,
Yes, experienced.
But,
Mhm.
you know, in my younger years, even though the things that I'm talking about now, I probably knew them, they were always there, but I may have been more fearful when I was a little younger because
Mm,
um, perceptions that others may have. But, now I'm like, hey, hey, I'm
As
Dr.
they say, it is what it is.
I'm Dr. Juliet Jordan Lowery, and I am here. I'm claiming my space.
Okay.
I'm claiming my time, and my time
Yes.
is I'm making a way for my sisters. And so, I'll take some of the bumps and bruises on behalf of those coming behind me. So, that may be my role at this particular time, but um, I'm very aware of the barriers, and um, my focus is how can I break them down?
I love that. I love that. It's clear that you have a very strong intention with mentoring and seeking out those that you can open the way for. I wonder, how do you balance the one on one mentorship with larger advocacy work to create that lasting systemic change?
I guess when I think about the two, I believe they really go hand in hand, because the work that I do institution wide impacts that one on one, because I'm focused on that foundational level. How can I make those changes that will be sustainable? And through that work, um, I think about the President's Commission on Inclusive Excellence that I chair at my
Mm,
current institution at Greensboro
mhm,
College. We have subcommittees that deal with access and opportunity, as well as looking at the climate, looking at the infrastructure, things like that. All of those things impact women of color, marginalized groups as a whole. The institution, and when we speak about inclusive excellence, that's what we talk about at the institution. Inclusive excellence is how do we embed those practices that focus on equity, inclusion within everything that we do at the institution. And so, institution wide, if we get it right, if we build it from the foundation up, then that's going to impact the daily lives of the individuals that I'm mentoring.
mm,
And so that's how I look at it. Um, Doing the work, educating individuals, engaging, educating, and empowering. That's a lot of the work that we do through my Office of Inclusive Excellence. But then that's also a part of how we go about doing things campus wide. And that
mm,
again circles back to that one on one mentoring. I'm engaging the individuals that I'm mentoring. I'm educating them on how do you navigate these systems at the institution. And then I'm empowering them to take what we're working on and move forward. Fly. You have the tools. I'm just here to kind of help you to um, I guess, shape them, mold them, align with the way that you see things. And that's the work that we do.
no, that is brilliant. And as someone who's a big believer in systems, I know that when you can repeat a process, you can expand the ideas. So the fact that in your individual mentoring, you're also sharing, how to impact things like policy and how decision making happens, and understanding what kind of leverage they can have by participating on boards as they advance in their careers, and being in those decision making roles. It's a really powerful thing for them to see you doing, and then to understand how to emulate and follow your steps, you know
Right.
so it's a really, really important factor that I don't think, of course, we're speaking about higher education, but I don't often think that in most, let's just say, more informal mentoring, as it relates to young women, and especially young women of color, that we have to begin to create an environment where these girls understand systemic change and how to bring it about.
Right.
They're never too young
Right.
to begin to employ these approaches. So I love what you said about that, and how it is that both and practice of the individual and the systems. And we, as you said earlier, Black fatigue is real, and so is the 80/20 principle, that typically you have 20% of the folks doing 80% of the work.
Amen.
And, you know, and we tired, and so succession and mentoring is a necessary act,
It is.
right? It's a revolutionary act
Yes.
to make sure that there are those who can carry on for us when our time is transitioning.
Exactly. Exactly. And to that point, when we're talking about this work, I tell people it's about the people, the practices, and the policies. We have to focus on that as we are trying to embed inclusive excellence in what we're doing. But it's a process.
Yeah.
And in order to sustain it, you've got to do that foundational work, because otherwise, if you build it too fast and you don't have a strong foundation, oftentimes that's where you come into some of those bumps in the road and so forth. So, slow and steady, but we're getting the work done.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned sustainability, and as we both know, with leadership, there comes that responsibility to protect your energy and your mental health as you're building, right? In this this never-ending effort of, well worth it, but it can be exhausting. So how do you help your mentees, and also how do you yourself build resilience, while protecting their well-being in high pressure, often exclusionary environments? What do you
Yes.
tell them?
Yes. Well, something that I've really leaned into a lot here the last, I'd say, 3 years or so is that phrase of protecting my peace.
Mm.
Things that um, are not going to bring me joy or cause me angst, then not that I don't have time for it, but I'm not going to allow it to take root. So, for that, finding ways, I used to be on 24/7, seemed like every day of the week,
Mm.
um, the entire year, and
Wow.
working those types of hours and always accessible by phone. And at the end of the day, where did that really get me? I wasn't taking vacations because, again, you talk about that labor that we as women of color especially put in.
Mm.
Because being very serious about the work that I do, the office that I ran, but also wanting to be there to support the students that I worked with and so forth. And you can only do that or run at that type of pace for so long. And so I had
Mhm.
to that philosophy that they would tell you about on the plane where, you put your mask on first and then you put the oxygen mask on your children. At first, I didn't understand that, but now thinking about it, you have to take care of yourself because if you don't have the energy, if you fall sick or you're not capable, then you can't help anyone else. And
Mm.
so now I try to make more time for myself and for me to rest. Rest is important. Resting your mind, um, getting that time to rest your body. Uh, Usually, now I started in late December walking. So I would get up and I'd do at least 2.5 miles before going to work. And that was to clear my mind um, and do some meditation and so forth. And I say all of that because I want to be able to do my job effectively. And I want to be able to give to those that I mentor. And so, with that, I have to do some of those things that allow me that downtime where I can refuel and refocus. And I share that with my mentees as well, that they need to find the ways to rest. What are some things? I enjoy journaling. Um, I do Affirmations are very important for me. When students come into my office, I have affirmations, whether it's something that is posted on my wall or I find these whimsical coffee mugs. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I have tons of coffee mugs. But again, they tell a story. Some may have black girl magic. Uh, Others may say inhale or exhale, a phenomenal woman, different quotes from Dr. King to Malcolm X to Gandhi. But those are things that I surround myself with. And I share that with my mentees and others because, again, I'm feeding into other people. And so helping them to understand that piece of rest, um, protecting your peace, and understanding that everyone does not deserve access to you.
Mm. Yes, yes. We're speaking about boundaries and self-compassion. I now you're getting into my stuff because this and my clients know, and I know they're out there right now shaking their heads like, "Yep, this is what the core of what she talks about." If we are not redefining the idea of strength as women of color and especially as Black women through the lens of self-care and self-advocacy,
Yes.
then we do ourselves a huge disservice. It is both a revolutionary act and a necessary one to do so. Black
Yes.
women's relationship with work has been shaped by colonization and
Mm.
slavery.
Yep.
And the idea that we do not deserve rest, we earn rest. But rest is a divine provision built into our DNA. It's something that is necessary for our survival. So it's interesting that many of us, have gotten to a place where we are renegotiating what is a necessity for our existence. And
Exactly. And
so
I love what's out there now talking about rest is
is resistance.
resistance. Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Trisha Hersey, thank you, Apostle of the Nap Ministry, for that, because the revolution will not be televised, but it will be on a podcast. Because we got to turn this thing around. We have got to, redefine how we understand what is necessary for our surviving and our thriving. And I think, for you to bring that to the forefront as such an achiever, but the understanding of how to balance achievement with rest and recovery is a definite message in mentoring that we cannot negotiate. We must have that conversation and help these younger women understand what that balance is about. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation, because we simply must. It's not optional. So as we talk about how our sisterhood works and that we know we want to stand in spaces of advocacy and support, what do we say to leaders in predominantly white spaces who want to authentically support women of color? What kind of advice or guidance do you have for sponsors and allies?
Listen. I mean,
Say it one more time.
listen, because oftentimes they want to fix a problem. And I applaud them for that. But they come in with, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. But have you talked to the women that are being affected? Have you talked to the individuals? And so people need to understand the art of listening. It's a powerful tool. Sounds simple,
Yes.
but it is a thing. And so that's what I would really share with individuals. And I do a lot of that with some of my colleagues, helping them to understand that you're sitting in a room wanting to solve issues for some of our students, but you haven't talked to them. You're going based off of what? Let's have conversations, critical conversations. Not talking about those surface level conversations. You may be uncomfortable, but you need to sit there and listen.
Mm, mm. Isn't
I'm
it
all
interesting that we
about
have to remind people that people should be centered in their own experience? How are you going to come and fix anything for them without first understanding how they perceive the problem?
right,
What is the concern that they feel is the highest priority that needs solving before you jump to the end and the conclusion? And
right,
it really is, rooted in the idea of white supremacy, great white saviors that were going to come and fix what ails these poor people. And it is, again, one of those subjects that you mentioned earlier that must be spoken about in spite of the uncomfortable space, in spite of, you know, how it may make people feel. Um, we're not here for feelings, we're here for change. And in order to employ change, we've got to confront some truth.
right. And um, again, I applaud those who want to help and who want to be allies. But also, what allies have to understand is you cannot make yourself an ally to
Mm,
women of color. Once you have proven yourself, you may be invited in to be an ally. But for you to just, oh, I'm an ally, that's not how this works.
mm,
You know,
mm.
as they talk about people being invited to the cookout. I mean, it's the same thing because, um, I think about some instances where people were, oh, wonderful working with you, you know, I'm your ally, that type of thing. Now things get heated, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to war, right? We're all, and I'm out there in front, and I look back, and I'm like, well, where is where'd everybody go? Where
Where the
are my
allies at?
allies? Right. So I'm not looking for allies necessarily. I'm looking for, what am I looking for, Coach Kristen? I'm
Uh,
looking for accomplices.
Advocacy,
I'm
engagement,
Look, I'm looking for
empathy.
accomplices or sponsors. I want people who are going to show up. When I'm out there advocating for others, when I turn around, there should well, I shouldn't have to turn around. There should be someone
Mm,
standing right beside
right
me.
next to you. That's right.
Or if
Right
I'm
next to
not
you.
in the room, someone should say, "Well, hey, where is Juliet? Why is she not at the table?"
Mm.
So,
Speaking your name in rooms you were not invited to.
exactly. Exactly. I
Mm,
do it all the time. So, my question is, why aren't you doing that for me?
mm. That is the question. And it's, a very powerful one because I think when true desire to advocate is present, it doesn't even have to be asked of you. It's simply what you do. As you said, no one has to ask you to advocate for these young women that you mentor for because you have a genuine desire to see them succeed. And I think that, you know, people are very good at thinking that their performative actions equate to allyship, when in truth, those things mean very little. It's the thing that costs you something, costs you, the sideways glance or the raised eyebrow or the uncomfortable glance when you stand and advocate for people who don't normally receive that advocacy and don't normally receive that sponsorship and support. So, yeah, it's going to cost something. And I think that's the part that people miss oftentimes, that it is a sacrificial act to side with people who are not invited, who are not considered. So, makes our work all the more meaningful. And I really, really value and appreciate this conversation because I think it's important to remind people that whatever walk of life we're in, higher education, business, you name it, we all hold a responsibility to speak up and to be the voice of the powerless,
Yes,
and to leverage what we have in the way of influence in order to open the way for others. So,
exactly.
with that, I'm sorry, go ahead. What did you say?
No, I was saying exactly, but there are two things that, and I know we're probably running out of time, but I wanted to share two short stories with you real quickly. I mentioned Nikki Roberson as being kind of that first mentor that I had coming out of Bradley University. She was in the admissions office. The next mentor that really kind of changed my outlook and my perspective on the work that I was doing and my next step. I was a young mother and had moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Went to the University of Tulsa and met with Dean Yolanda Taylor just to introduce myself, who I was, and what I was doing. Um, and I had moved to Tulsa. She didn't know me from anyone. Months went by. I had applied to graduate school because I knew I needed to make that next step. And I was waiting to hear back about my admissions. I get a phone call, and it's Dean Taylor. And she asked me a couple of questions, but then she led with, "Would you like a graduate assistantship?" And I said, "Yes, but," she said, "No buts. Would you like a graduate assistantship?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Be on campus on Monday." This was a Friday. And I was like, "Oh my goodness. What am I going to do? I have a toddler." So I was trying to get things in order. When I hit campus on that Monday, I went to her office. They gave me paperwork. I went over to the graduate office. They were like, "Oh, here's your information. You've been admitted. You have the graduate assistantship. Go do XYZ." Just from that time when I met her, again, another African American woman, I introduced myself. A graduate assistantship came open. She remembered me. She called me. That began our relationship. She was strong. She was firm. She was also very nurturing. Um, but that became a transformational experience for me. I learned so much about higher ed under Dean Yolanda Taylor. Not only that, I worked as a graduate assistant over diversity programs. A full time position came open almost a year later, and she said she wanted me to apply for the role, which was over student activities and new student orientation. And again, that's not she said, "Look, I never want you to be pigeonholed as only being the woman who knows diversity programs." I applied for the position. She wasn't on the search committee. I did get the role and, took on that responsibility, learned everything that I could learn. So the lesson out of that, you never know who is going to serve in that role as a mentor, a advocate, or a sponsor. Dean Taylor didn't know me, but I was a young African American woman that came and introduced myself. So she took a chance on me, and from there she fed into me. And even though I interviewed and got the position, and I had credentials that would make me one who could do that role, but I'm sure somewhere in there she served as an advocate and a sponsor for me. And even till today, I tell the story to my mentees about the woman who helped me, my mentor, who she didn't know me from anyone, but she gave me that opportunity. Full tuition, a stipend, and health insurance came along with that graduate assistantship. And so that was one story. The last one that I'll share with you was here recently, one of my newest mentees um, came to work at the institution, and I always try and check in on new employees just to introduce myself and be visible and make sure that they're adjusting. And so one of these days, and I was having a rough day, all the changes that are happening in this world that we exist in. Um,
Hmm.
but I showed up at work and put a smile on my face. I was channeling my Olivia Pope. I put on one of those killer suits and went to work.
Yes.
And so I was coming down the hallway, and the young lady stopped me and she said, I just want you to know that I really admire how you come to work. You're so professional. You're always engaging with people. And when I get older, I want to be like you. And I stopped her right there. I was like, are you calling me old? She looked petrified. I was like, I'm just joking with you. And she said, no, I mean, when I get older, I want to be seasoned like you. I was like, look, I'm just joking with you. But I thought, wow, that was powerful because she had the look of being kind of petrified that she had offended me. And I was really just joking with her and kind of smooth things over, telling her, I understand I'm much older than she is, or I could be her auntie. We'll just say that. I can
Yeah,
be
you
her auntie, her younger
rich
auntie.
auntie, yes.
Exactly. But, it was really interesting where I was uh, coming to work, not necessarily feeling myself, just because of outside influences. But, I had gotten up, dressed, took that walk, and I came to work. And I think about it, you never know how you're going to affect someone's life, how you're showing up in spaces, and how those efforts may impact someone. And in this particular case, uh, the opportunity to serve as a mentor to this young woman, because soon after that, I remember looking up, her knocking at my door, and we shared a couple of, I think it was a couple of maybe Bible verses that we had come across. As I mentioned earlier, I'm really big into affirmations and things like that, and I share it out with people. And I had shared some with her, and it was at that particular time she said that she would like me to be her mentor. And from there, we've just developed that relationship of yes, those things that I can help her with professionally, but then those things that we discuss where some things that I can help her personally, and things like that, which will then translate into uh, various benefits on the job and so forth. So you just never know how you're going to affect people. And, um, in mentoring, uh, I learn things from my mentees just as much as I hope they learn things from me. And it's a reciprocal relationship.
That is awesome. Well, there you have it, the next level wisdom coming forth from Dr. Juliet Jordan Lowery. I want to thank you so much, Juliet, for sharing your insights, your stories, your wisdom. You've given us a really powerful roadmap for inclusive career mentoring that will impact not only personal transformation, but institutional transformation. So I want to thank you for that. For our listeners, you can connect with Dr. Juliet Jordan Lowery on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We'll link all of her details in the show notes. So please make sure to follow her. and find out what she's doing now, what she's got going on. And who knows, if you're in the space of needing mentorship or needing connection, reach out, because this woman definitely has the formula to help you get to your next level. So if this conversation has inspired you, be sure to follow Next Level Woman wherever you listen to podcasts, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Remember that we do have some practical exercises that you can download at levelupcoaching.llc under free resources. So until next time, keep reading, keep leading, keep learning, and keep leveling up. Thanks for being with us. Good night.